Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest in sports news, fantasy analysis, and opinions. Don't forget the hot takes. Can't have a sports show without hot takes these days. What about hot cakes, though? I want some hot cakes. Now, here's your host, ready to jump into the thick of things, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, and welcome to the show, everyone. It's going to be a quick one just because I'll do a quick recap of the Saturday games, and we got to get out just to get this uploaded ahead of the 3 o'clock game between the Texans and the Chiefs. So obviously going to be talking NFL. Last night we had Baltimore getting knocked out by the Titans in the big story of the day. Listen, Tennessee went into Baltimore and punched the Ravens in the mouth, and the Ravens just had no response to it. You know, people can try to criticize Lamar Jackson for turning the ball over, but realistically, when Derrick Henry shows up and rushes 30 times for 190 yards, that's the story of the game. The Titans ran the ball whenever they wanted. The Ravens couldn't stop them. When the Ravens tried to run the football, Mark Ingram was clearly compromised by the calf, and the Titans were winning the line of scrimmage. To me, it seemed as though the Titans had a read on the snap count for Baltimore, because every time Baltimore is trying to snap the ball, they're getting shut down. Point blank, I think that they probably ended up tipping something off with the snap count based off of what the Titans had picked up on the regular season, and they were beating Baltimore offensive line to the point of attack almost every single run play. It was not a good look. It basically the Baltimore got completely out of their element and could not get any sense of momentum. So yeah, it's a problem. It is absolutely a problem. And, Baltimore is going to look at this as a missed opportunity because, again, postseason time, you usually try to have at least a few tricks up your sleeve in terms of play selection. But realistically, it was just a lot of the same from Baltimore's end of things. And as I said, the receivers couldn't get open. Lamar Jackson's trying to make some plays, but at the point of attack, they were getting beat. It really is that simple that, Baltimore could not run and enforce their will on their opponent, which they had done pretty much the entire bulk of the season. And, Tennessee was able to do whatever they wanted in their rushing attack. I mean, Ryan Tannehill only threw for 88 yards. On top of, it is an increase over what he did last week against the Patriots, but he only threw for 88 yards and 3 touchdowns. And don't forget, Derrick Henry also threw for a touchdown pass as well. He didn't run for a touchdown; he threw for a touchdown pass on a jump pass, no less. It is what it is, but the Tennessee caught Baltimore for a couple of big plays. The jump pass by Derrick Henry was one of them. The first touchdown, which was a blown assignment by the Baltimore secondary, where Fitzpatrick. Ryan Tannehill finds Raymond streaking down the field on a go route for a 46-yard touchdown pass, or maybe it was 54-yard. I forget it. It was a long touchdown pass, and bottom line, it was a blown coverage by the Ravens, and that just seemed to signify the night for the Ravens in general. They could not get anything going, and it was all she wrote by and large. They just could not get any sense of momentum, and when it's going in that direction, sometimes that snowball effect kicks in as if it was a Madden video game, and you can't get anything going. The amount of drops by the Ravens receivers, I think It was either 6 or 7 on the night, and they were all in critical situations where they needed to move the chains, and their wide receivers just kept dropping the ball. Willie Snead had a bad night. Seth Roberts had a bad night. But again, these aren't, your top tier wide receivers, which, again, you're not going to get a top tier wide receiver when you're running such a run dominant offense. I mean, Hollywood Brown had a nice game, but the problem was that Hollywood even got nicked up towards the second half of that game and wasn't able to do anything. But the problem is that, at the end of the day, the Titans were just more physical. I mean, they were laying the lumber. They got away with a couple of helmet shots because they absolutely hit Hollywood Brown helmet to helmet a few times. They did it to Deshaun Watson. I mean, they did it to Lamar Jackson without any penalties being called on them. It is what it is, but the Titans did what they needed to do and got the W. All credit to them. I thought they would have covered the line. I did not expect them to win outright, but they got the win and the under hit. So, I mean, it worked. Oh, wait a second. Is that an update on? No. Sorry, I'm checking the news to see if there's I'm literally checking to see if there's a Will Fuller update, and it looks as though Will Fuller is playing it. At first, I thought he was out, but it looks like he is playing today. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say about how that game went other than just a disaster for the Ravens? All right, so moving on, let's talk about what went on between the Niners and the Vikings. I mean, it wasn't an affair that Kirk Cousins were like. Yeah, it was not like that for Kirk. It was a very much different affair from the Saints game. I mean, the Vikings abandoned the run game almost immediately. I'm still scratching my head as to how they thought not running Dalvin Cook was their best option of beating the 49ers. I mean, as much as the 49ers have a good defensive line, that was the Vikings' only chance of winning, in my opinion. The 49ers basically controlled the line of scrimmage. Richard Sherman had his way with Adam Thielen. And outside of a couple of early surges by Stephon Diggs, the 49ers were able to contain him with double coverage and a safety with a safety over the top. So, again, it was not a great showing for the Vikings. It's not that Kirk Cousins was bad, but there really wasn't a whole lot to write home about. And, the Vikings just, again, never really seemed to be in that matchup by and large. Robert Saleh dominated the matchup between him and Kevin Stefanski, the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. Of course, it looks as though now the news report is saying that the Browns are going to hire Kevin Stefanski, even though he just got dominated by Saleh, which would be the most Browns thing ever, to hire the guy who got whooped 27-10, and it was not close. Basically, this was domination by the 49ers. They established what they needed to do and took care of business against an overmatched Vikings team that clearly was showing signs of fatigue in the second half as well. Yeah, that pretty much summed it up on the day. There really wasn't that much else to talk about this game other than the 49ers did what they needed to do. One thing that caught me off guard was they actually did leave George Kittle in just strictly to block. He really wasn't a factor on offense. And the biggest thing was the fact that from an offensive standpoint, uh, you know, you had you basically had a performance where the 49ers just went by the numbers and took care of business. But there wasn't a whole lot going on, so to speak, in terms of offensive output, if you will, by the 49ers. They kept things relatively straightforward and got the job done, but nothing that's gonna be considered earth shattering by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah. Outside of that, yeah, it was Tevin Coleman had a couple of good runs. Looked as though Mostert got a little bit banged up, so that changed things a little bit. But yeah, not too much out of the ordinary. But it is what it is, and 49ers move on, and they're going to play the winner of Seattle Green Bay. So let's talk about that one. You know, Seattle wins ugly. Green Bay also wins ugly. The weather forecast is pretty much what I said yesterday. It's going to be pretty cold. Not a whole lot going on in terms of snow to start the game. It just looks like it's going to be freezing cold. Again, I don't like the spread on this one because I feel as though this could swing for either squad, but I will take the under 45 and live with that bet. Outside of DFS plays, not really looking at a whole lot here. Outside of Aaron Jones and maybe Jamal Williams for the Packers. But yeah, maybe it turns into a shootout. I just don't have the warm and fuzzies as I was waking up today to try to make that case for this particular matchup. I want to focus my attention to the Texans and Chiefs game. And again, I expect this game to shoot out well over the 50.5 over-under total. Still like KC in this one. Yeah, it's a 10-point spread for KC. Obviously we got the knowledge of Andy Reid. Overall record 28-5 off the bye, 4-1 off the bye in postseason play. Texans secondary suspect. By and large, Kansas City should take control of this game early and put up points. The issue is I see Deshaun Watson also being able to put up points against the Chiefs defense, but I think it'll be more from a catch-up perspective. So we'll see how it shapes up. But, the biggest thing I have to say is, it's going to come down to some turnovers. Like with most of these games where you got two potent offenses, turnover battle is going to be key. And, who can make some defensive stops, but to shake things up. But yeah, I'm definitely very much in favor of taking the over here, and I'm more than confident in going that route. So that's all I got. And in terms of who to play from a DFS perspective, obviously I'm looking at both QBs, so I'll be playing a combination of Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. And then you can start changing it up from the perspective of, you can have, you can play D-Hop, you can play Tyreek Hill, you can play Kelsey. I like the running back options for Houston more than Kansas City, so I would be playing more Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde over the likes of Damian Williams, or if you wanted to try to get a little bit crazy with a LaShawn McCoy. I'm not a fan of going the McCoy route. I just think that from the standpoint of, looking at it objectively, the best way of kind of going about this is, uh, you know, play some of the playmakers, and then you can differentiate by using some of the offshoot wide receivers. So you can look at a Mecole Hardman for the Chiefs. You can look at a Demarcus Robinson for the Chiefs, or you can look at a Kenny Stills for the Texans. I think all those guys are viable options to get yourself a little bit different from the competition and go in that direction rather than trying to force something with some of these other guys that I just don't think are going to be doing a whole lot in the Green Bay Seattle game. So I think, the game stack of Texans or Chiefs, depending on how you want to flip that coin, I think that's the route to go. And you game stack that game from a couple of different angles, and that's the way of getting the winning lineup, if you will. So that's the way I want to go about it. Obviously, again, I said taking the over in the Kansas City game. I'll take the Chiefs minus the 10. And as for the Green Bay Seattle game, don't like either side. I would take the Packers -4, but don't feel great about it if I had to. But I would definitely take the under 45. That's just the way I see things lining up. And, just the way, just moving on to the championship games, just the way Tennessee's been playing, even if Kansas City wins today, I kind of like the Titans. As crazy as it sounds, it very much feels as though the Titans' offensive line is just dictating how these playoff games are going to go. And, the Ravens just had no answer for it. So, very curious to see how these games play out. If it turns into a shootout today, I'm curious to see how both these defenses hold up next week against the Titans, because the Titans, by and large, they were just playing physical. They were the same way throughout and showed no signs of any wear and tear from the previous matchup against the Patriots. So we'll see how it goes, but that's all I have for now, and have a good one, folks. Enjoy the games.